Hello everybody, this is Marty from Dogs Blog with a noontime report of the morning session of the Frank Carson et al. Trial on February 6, 2019. Court was, I believe it was scheduled for 9, but maybe 9:30. That's pretty much when everybody showed up. The judge was here right at 9:30 and was on the bench at 9:39. I noticed Praveen Singh was sitting in the courtroom again. Apparently then ordered back for today to testify. Still on day 12 of Robert Woody, so he's not done. Even though MARLISA Ferrer said she'd be done with Robert Woody by noon today, and we all chuckled, and that turned out not to be true. She originally wanted to order Praveen Singh back at 1:30. The judge says, no, maybe tomorrow. So he is scheduled back tomorrow. After that was done, Attorney Hans addressed the court, saying last Thursday, MARLISA Ferrer had showed Robert Woody a document that had some of her personal notes and writings on them, and the defense has not received them yet as requested because it was shown to the witness. MARLISA Ferrer requested that one line be shown in that document that she wanted Robert Woody to read and block out the rest because it's her work product, and in unison the defense says no, very loudly. Judge Inigo got the document to look at it, to make a determination, and MARLISA Ferrer addressed the judge, says other than that one line, she says the rest is her work product. Judge Inigo asked Kurt Bunch to run off one copy of the document, and apparently it was something from the 3/1 of 2014 interview of Robert Woody by Kurt Bunch, John Evers, and I believe Steve Jacobson was there. Judge Inigo advised MARLISA Ferrer that the only privileges concerned of work product are the core work product, and she's asking how this document is a core product that makes it privilege. MARLISA Ferrer says the document has notes of her dissertation of what had happened and their theory in the process of the prosecutor's case, and she will use that for her closing argument. She says it's a statement of facts and it shows the defense is involved in the homicide. She said the unhighlighted areas of the document were covered on cross, and the highlighted area was to be areas that she is to cover for her redirect. Judge Inigo says there are no bait stamps on this document. MARLISA Ferrer says, and bait stamps are it's a number that's put in the bottom of each page. So when they submit something, they put bait stamps on it, so there's an order, a correlation that they can go to, even though it may have a report number or a page number or whatever. They can go to that bait stamp. It keeps all the stuff that comes in a court case in a consecutive order, so it could go for referring to later on. Judge Inigo started getting that confused look on her face again, and she sat there for a minute, as she does, and it almost appears that she's staring off into space, but she's in deep thought, hopefully. And she finally cited some case law in regards to work product, that it says it is statements of facts and not a core product is not considered work product, and it must be discoverable. It must be discovered. And in addition, it was shown to the witness, so even if it was a core product, it was shown to a witness for testimony to refresh his memory. It must be discovered. Attorney Hans argued he hasn't seen the document, but it's obvious that it's not a work product, but a dissertation of facts that they showed to Robert Woody. Even if it was work product, it has now been shown to the witness in its entirety, and he has a habit of reading everything and asks to read everything because he likes to get reference to everything that he refreshes with. He also says it sounds like that there's, at the top of the document, there are some statements that confirm true to or from Robert Woody. Jai Gohil argued there were many ways for Marlisa Ferrer to do what she did, but she chose to show it to the witness and with her notes on it instead of using a clean copy or just have segregating that one line that she wanted him to read. He said, Percy Martinez argued that Robert Woody continually asked to read more of these refreshed documents, transcripts and reports and what have you. And he always wants to read more to get reference points. And it was obvious that Robert Woody spent a lot of time reading more than that one line of that document. Marlisa Ferrer used that entire document unredacted. And now, when she did that, she has now waived her privilege rights. Marlisa Ferrer says she gave instructions to Robert Woody to read the one line, and Robert Woody still said he did not recall and said a recording might help. Judge Zuniga, pulling the transcript of Thursday's testimony on this particular document, what was said, to refresh her memory because she can't remember. And asked the attorneys if they want her to rule now or bring up the jury as they're sitting downstairs again for some time. Marlisa Ferrer now wants to cue up the recording that she talked about last Thursday to refresh Robert Woody's memory, and she has not prepared it in advance, is now trying to find the spot in that 7-hour recording where that statement was made, and she's having trouble locating it. She was not prepared coming to court. Judge Iniga started reading the transcript from Thursday and says on page 11 of the testimony of the night of the homicide, you recall on the 3/1/14 interview what was said. He did not recall. The judge was reading and went on to read, and Marlisa Ferrer asked him to refresh his testimony if that would help, and he said yes. She did say just read one line, but told Robert Woody he could read much more than you need to. And then Robert Woody did that, and then he said he didn't recall anyway. Marlisa Ferrer was still trying to cue up that spot in that recording of that Robert Woody statement during the interview, and she's unable to locate, as she says it's a long recording and still trying to locate. Again, we all noted that she wasn't prepared to come to court and play this as an attorney should be. So they decided to go ahead and call the jury up, and they'll discuss this issue. I believe they're going to do it at 1:30. So the jury up at 10:26, Robert Woody on the stand. Marlisa Ferrer goes into her redirect. She showed him evidence number 737. It's a Google Maps image. And Robert Woody says it's a picture of the Carson property. It's an overhead satellite picture. And it has Robert Woody's signature, date, and time on the bottom of it, and that was, I believe, from the 3/1/14 interview that he had done that. He made marks on where the locations of interest were on the Frank Carson property, where the bus was, where the gates were, and things like that, and then he had signed, it supposedly occurred by the double-decker bus. He did not recall when doing the interview that he had actually marked that map, but he says it is his signature. He says it was where the red bus is, again, looking at it again, and that's where the alleged homicide occurred. Again, this is on the 3/1/14 interview. He was asked if Marlisa Ferreira asked him if Kurt Bunch had threatened him with the death penalty, and asked if he recalled how that issue had come up. He was arrested for a homicide. He said yes, homicide and conspiracy, he believes, were the first charges were. He was asked if Kurt Bunch fully explained the charges. He did not recall. Refreshing with the transcript from the interview again, and Kurt Bunch had explained the charges with special circumstances on the homicide, and that could mean the death penalty. She moved forward, and she moves back and forth from interviews, so I may move back and forth between the 8/14 of 15 interview and the March 1st of 2014 interview. They go back and forth, and I don't know why they do it that way, but they do. So now talking about the 8/14 of interview, 8/14 of 2015 interview. This is at the Sheriff's Office with Steve Jacobson and then Sergeant Dombey from the California Highway Patrol. He says he was never paraded in front of the defendants as they were being brought into the booking area. Martin Baker was his attorney and present. He said that he didn't remember any private investigator being present. He was asked about when he and Daljeet Atwal went to South Johnson Street. He did not recall. And he was asked who had asked about that. And that was, they're talking about the interview again. He says he does not recall. They had a sidebar because there was an objection about the way that she was refreshing, and he really hadn't. I believe the objection was in regards to, and the sidebar were in regards to her refreshing and trying to refresh his memory prior to him totally had explained he doesn't have recall. Robert Woody had also asked to read more pages that were given to him, and 2 more pages were given, were taken up to him on the stand, and he did say it refreshes. Sergeant Dombey and Steve Jacobson asked about South Johnson, and there was another objection, so she goes back to the 3/1 of 14 interview. She bounces back and forth like that. And he was asked about Kim Stout had never visited him in the jail. He had been in custody at all times, and she had not been visited at the jail or had a phone call with Kim Stout or talked to her and at any time, and does not know when she talked to law enforcement officers. Bouncing back forward again, going forward again to 8/14 of 2015 interview. He was talking about the threats to Corey Kaufman on Johnson Street. This was to Dombey and Jacobson again. He did not recall what was said in that interview, but he did remember yelling out his ass, "Your ass is grass." He told investigators that he was with Bobby Atwal, who was driving Dee's BMW. He mentioned Kim Stout goes by. He did not recall talking to the investigators or anybody else about that. He did talk in regards to the Atwals and the homicide. He did not recall telling them when Baljeet Atwal had left Poppencork that night. He did have to refresh. And he did not recall anything that he saw when Bobby Atwal left the store. He knew when Bobby was gone because he had saw him walk out the door. And he knew he was going to do a property check on 9th Street. Robert Woody also said he knew it was Frank Carson property. Again, referring to the 8/14 of 15 interview. Did he tell them about Corey Kaufman assault by the Atwals on the property? They described it like a cat trying to get away from some dogs. Told him that they entered by the small gate. He did not recall anything about the other gate. Again, refreshing with the transcript. The big gate, the small gate is the man gate that people walk through. The big gate is where vehicles and stuff, it can be open for vehicle stuff to go through. He told him the big gate had a lock on it and it was secure. The man gate What was not locked. In fact, it was open when they got there. He was asked if he ever saw, for some reason, I don't know why she asked this, if she ever saw Christine DiFilippo that night. Asked if he ever saw a young woman standing by the gate that night. He said no, he never saw either. He was asked if he saw any other vehicles that were parked in the driveway at the house. He did not recall any other vehicles. Said what did he do during the altercation? He pulled on their shirts, trying to get them to stop, saying he had enough. He said he did not recall what else he did to try to get them to stop. He had to refresh his memory again, and they had a sidebar. There was objections to that. I think the judge wanted some clarification on that. When they came back from the sidebar, Marlisa Ferrer asked him if he talked to the Outlaws in regards to the Corey Kaufman incident at any time before, during, or after. And he did not recall any conversations about Corey Kaufman at any time. They did say they'd take him to the store after the incident on Carson's property. Prior to the alleged homicide, there were no conversations in regards to Corey Kaufman or any other anybody else that might be stealing from the property. They wanted to stop the thefts, apparently, he said, by assaulting people. It kind of got a little confusing through there in that last part. He said there was no conversation, but he said they did want to stop the thefts by assaulting people. There was a refresh that Marlisa Ferrer wanted to do with Robert Woody, and the judge read the what she wanted him to read, and she says, not a chance. No can do. He was asked if there's any conversations with Frank Carson and the Outlaws and in regarding to the thefts. He did not recall. He was asked if he told the investigators what the Outlaws were to do. He did not recall what he had told Dombey and Jacobson. In regard to the Outlaws, he said they just told him to keep his mouth shut, and he said, yes, that's what they told me. After, did he tell Dombey and Jacobson after the alleged homicide, he took the body to Poppencork to bury? He said, yes, I did. He told him he burned the truck after the mountain trip, which was later. Also said Scott McFarland had put a garden in the side lot of the Poppencork after the Corey Kaufman alleged homicide. The garden was done after the body was moved out. It was done towards the back of the lot by the alley where the gravesite was. He had tilled up and covered the area where Corey Kaufman had been buried. He said that Scott McFarland rototilled the lot, never talking to Scott McFarland about the location to put the garden in. So he never told him where to do anything. Daljeet Atwal apparently had told McFarland he wanted a big garden, and he was asked if there was any conversations between McFarland and the Outlaws and where, and he said D said towards the back. McFarland did rototill it, pulled the grass off it, raked it up, put fertilizer on it, the mulch or whatever they call it, and then tilled it into the ground. The compost was tilled in, it was raked, and then the seeds were planted. He said it produced vegetables and some other items. He said there was never a garden prior, during, or after, just that one time that a garden was put out there. He was asked what he was telling investigators in regards to the garden, and when the body was moved to the mountains, he did not recall. Again, refreshed. Said he took the body to the mountains and put the body down a gully, and then he had said he had put the body on top of the ground up in the mountains. The next day, which was August 15th of 2015 interview, was when he did the walkthroughs of the properties at Poppencork, Frank Carson property, and the mountains. He said where the body was buried and where everything that had happened. showed locations on all of the properties and all the activities that went on, and also where he was taken to the mountains. Woody said that Kaufman had a bullet wound to the back, and on 8/14 and 15, he told investigators whether Baljeet Atwal was using a cell that day that they had moved the body. He did not recall. Also talking about when he was moved to the mountains, unknown if phones were used on that day too. Robin Attenhofer had her phone with her, but not sure if it was on. He did not have a phone at the time, and he did not recall whether Bobby Atwal was using his phone. Usually when he's on his phone all the time when he's in his car, but he did not recall if he used his phone that night. He also did not recall if he relayed that information to the investigators. MARLISA Ferrer asked him about throwaway phones, if he knew what they were. He said they're cheap phones you buy, you use them a few times and get rid of them. The Atwals talk about getting throwaway phones because of the love letters that were received from the law enforcement. Now, love letters, for those who don't know, it's a notification if you're not a subject of a wiretap, and you get caught on a wiretap in a conversation, they are required to notify you that you were caught on a wiretap. So that's what the street name for them are, love letters. They had talked about getting the throwaway phones after the body had been removed due to the love letters received. He said they got the idea from Frank Carson. Robert Wood, he said he never got a throwaway phone. The Atwals had changed their phones after the love letters were received, and he never did see Frank Carson again after that. And he was also asked about what Frank Carson had said, or the Atwals had said for them to do, that Frank Carson said for them to do, is to contact him if someone is located stealing from the property. That's where we broke for lunch. The jury had been, the court reporter really, she started around 9:30 or whenever it was, 9:39, and the court reporter never got a break, and so she called a break at about 10 minutes early before lunch, and the jury was sent out. We're coming back at 1:30, and remember MARLISA Ferrer said she'd be done by noon. That's what led to all the chuckles in the room, because we all knew better, and her cross-examination is going into the afternoon, and I bet you it goes into tomorrow too, the way things are going. There is some issues that are going to be discussed at noon to finish up this recording, and the document that she showed Robert Woody last Thursday, and the judge has got to finally make a ruling on that, because the defense attorneys, before they do cross-examination again, they need a ruling on that. So we'll be back at 1:30, and don't forget the podcast tonight, and all these recordings are now being uploaded straight to the site, and you don't need to go to Spreaker or anywhere else to listen to them. You can go to Spreaker if you want, it'll be up later. But all the audios are being uploaded to my site. See you at 6 o'clock.